All right, so we are live. Hey guys, welcome to the TED Show. Welcome back. Super excited to have Chris Coburn on the show today. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Ted.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you.
So I'm looking down at my phone just to make sure we're live and make sure I share it properly so that you guys know this is the new world of Facebook Live shows that I'm to figure out how to do. Um, you can't make it up, Chris. It's a great thing, but it's also a crazy thing. All right, so
Right.
we are officially live. So excited to have you on the show. You recently did an amazing series of, I want to call it tell all, but that sounds so salacious. So you just were sharing your heart and your journey.
Right.
And I said, you know what, I'd love for you to do whatever you feel comfortable sharing that same thing with my audience.
Right.
So welcome.
Well, I will say thank you for having me, but you reached out to me before I ever put that on. So you were ahead of
That's
the
true.
curve.
I did.
You
You're
did.
absolutely right. So that was just more motivation for me to follow up. All right. So everybody loves origin story. They like to know about Chris, where you're from, how you got to where you're at. And then I want you to share with them what it is that you do. And then we can take a deep dive. I love this topic. And I definitely want them to hear your story. So tell them a little bit about you.
Okay, so my name is Chris Coburn, and I was actually born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Moved to Nashville, Tennessee for a little while. Came to Florida in 2006. I worked at a car dealership before I realized everyone hates car salespeople. And then I, then I went to timeshare at Westgate Resorts. And then I realized everyone hates timeshare salespeople. So I'm actually the owner of Coburn Credit Group, and we assist homeowners, lenders, realtors with getting people approved to purchase homes. I love it here, Central Florida. It's my home. I don't think I'm gonna go anywhere else.
How did you make the transition from timeshare into credit?
Well, with Westgate, a lot of things shut down around 2008, and I lost my job. But it was funny because they had me on a salary, and they kept firing me and bringing me back every 2 weeks at a lower salary. And one day I just kind of said, you know what, I'm never going to do this again. And I told them, I said, I'm never coming back. And I left. And I actually started, I think the statute of limitations is up, but I started selling like Rosetta Stone to realtors, not realtors, well, realtors at Westgate that didn't speak Spanish so that they could take advantage of the Spanish speaking line and go make some more money.
You were selling Rosetta Stone?
Rosetta Stone I was.
I didn't know you could. That's like the old school encyclopedia salesperson.
Right. Well, this was 2008. So I did that, and I met a lot of realtors. And I think I got in touch with about 200 and something realtors. And I realized that there was a need. Back then, it was helping realtors with short sales, loan modifications, and people would say, hey, this guy Chris helped me get a loan modification. You need to get in touch with my realtor. And then it just became one thing after another. When that stopped, then I decided to switch it over to credit because I have all these realtor contacts. They need people that are going to purchase homes. What better way to just transition? So it was pretty easy.
You make it sound easy, but credit itself is a complex, for
Right.
most people, scary, unknown that people have a difficult time maneuvering through. Plus, like all industries, there's a whole bunch of charlatans out there that
Right.
take advantage of the consumers. So it's a very, very difficult place for a consumer to try to figure out how to get to somebody like
Right.
you. How do you set yourself apart?
Well, I don't go after anyone that's just looking to fix their credit. I work with realtors and loan officers specifically, because if you're just trying to fix your credit because you saw someone advertise credit repair, there's really no motivation there. And those people typically fall off the wagon. But if I'm working directly with the realtor and loan officer only, then if anything happens, because credit repair is not so much about just what I do, but it's also about what the client does.
Right.
And it's easier for me to tell the loan officer, hey, this person isn't getting me what I need you to get on them. So a lot of the people that come my way, they want to purchase a home. Now, mistakes will be made, but having a realtor and a loan officer in the mix allows there to be a lot more accountability. So that's how I set myself apart.
And how are you feeling about what's going on now since you're in credit and it's on everybody's mind with uh, what's going on? And do you stop paying? Do you not stop paying? What's a tip or two that you can throw out there before we deep dive?
No, you're fine. Keep paying if you can. For example, I see a lot of people talking about forbearance as if it's some sort of magic bullet. You don't want to take forbearance on your mortgage or really anything else for that matter if you can afford to pay, because when they spring up all those payments at once on month number 4 or 5, you're going to be in a worse position than you were when you started. So if you can afford to pay your bills, pay them. If you can't, that's something completely different, and I don't want to give too much advice where that's concerned, but if you can afford to pay, keep paying.
It's interesting. I've seen very recently that has become a debate on social media.
Right.
A lot of lots of people get really angry and up in arms about pretty much anything these days.
Yes.
Because what else do they have to do?
Right.
But it definitely, landlord versus tenant, how one's responsible, one's not. And my only advice to people is just remember there's multiple sides and you never know what somebody's going through. So just be kind, because it reflects on you and your business when you're not.
Right.
I have snoozed a few people on Facebook because they are just so one-sidedly negative. And I think if you're trying to still survive in your business and you're out there putting out negative stuff, you really ought to rethink it. So there's TED tips for today. All right, so let's dive in. Let's talk about you recently released, made several, at least 5 or 6 videos talking about your life, talking about a specific thing or specific things that were going on in your life. Can you give us a little background on that, and then maybe share what you want to, and I'll ask questions as we go, because I think first I want to give you kudos before you even start. Anytime anybody's authentic and vulnerable like that, I love to give a shout out because it takes a lot, and you're going to get hits for it. But I'm a big believer in that the hits certainly do not outweigh the benefit that you get and the ability to share with somebody who might have gone through the same thing.
Right.
Or you're also just being you, and people respond to you being you. So share your story, please.
Okay. So what you're referring to specifically is the fact that I was the target of a federal criminal investigation where I ended up going to trial. So to back up a bit, one of the ways that I got in touch with so many realtors was because back in 2009, 10, 12, 13, so on and so forth, one of the biggest issues facing homeowners was foreclosure. And a lot of times you can send in a production request to the bank, which is a whole nother topic, to have a foreclosure sale canceled. Or if you had a realtor that was working on a short sale, let's say a home is worth $100,000, but the realtor is able to get a contract for $150,000. We would just file a motion saying, hey, look, we got the short sale package, and the realtor is able to get much more than you'll ever recover at auction, allow us to sell it. And it would work to the point where I could guarantee that the sale would be stopped. In some certain situations, some homeowners had to do a suggestion of bankruptcy. So there was one gentleman who I discussed only by initials in the YouTube video that asked me to file a suggestion of bankruptcy on his behalf after the house sold. That's not how it works. If the house sells, the automatic stay from the suggestion of bankruptcy doesn't do any good, so it wouldn't make much sense for me to do it. What I explained to him was, you're working on a short sale, it's sold at auction for $100 back to the bank. If you file a motion to vacate the sale and reverse the sale because you got a short sale going on, usually that will work. He said, no, an attorney told me I have to file bankruptcy. I have to file bankruptcy. Can you please do it for me? Now, backing up a bit, one thing that I'm known for is I love to help. Back then, I would take my own money and I would feed and clothe the homeless in downtown Orlando. Never asked for donations, never asked for anything. a good friend of mine told a story recently. When I was in court, he wrote a letter to the judge saying, Chris is the type of person where a homeless guy helped him push his car out of the road because it ran out of gas a few years ago. And Chris paid for this man who was on drugs and homeless to fly to Puerto Rico to be with his family. I forgot that I ever did that, but I did it.
Wow.
Because this guy, he didn't ask me for anything. My car ran out of gas. He helped me push it to the side of the road, and he walked away. Didn't ask me for money. Didn't ask me for anything.
So this is a character. Somebody had, it was a character witness. Is my word. That's
right. That's what it is.
But somebody was okay. Somebody was a character witness to what you're about to share. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So I completely forgot that I did that, but those are the type of things that I'm known for doing just because. So when he asked me to do it, knowing that it wouldn't make a difference, I said, okay, fine. Come on down to downtown Orlando, fill out the paperwork, file it. But again, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But if you're saying an attorney is telling you to do it, who am I to disagree? So he came down, but he couldn't make it before the court closed. And he asked me to sign the paperwork for him. I said, no, I protested. But again, me being gullible, I said, fine, I'll go ahead and do it. He's giving me permission right here through text message. I'll do it. So I did. Didn't work like I told him it wouldn't. His bank account was frozen. And then all of a sudden, I get a letter saying that I have to go to the federal courthouse to answer for stealing this person's identity and filing bankruptcy in his name. So now to even discuss the logic,
because you signed that paperwork that got filed.
Right. So now even discussing the logical fallacy of it, if you're going to steal someone's identity, you wouldn't file bankruptcy. That's kind of besides the point. So when that happened, I went to court in 2015, defended myself, and I won. And the reason that I won is because I had the text messages to show that I didn't just take your information, you gave it to me.
Right.
So the judge wrote was that, hey, Chris did it at this guy's suggestion, but Mr. Coburn, I need you to understand, you have to put your name on all paperwork. My response to the judge was, I appreciate that, but I think I'm going to move on to other things. That's when I started doing credit repair full time, because I didn't even, if that was going to land me in court just for doing what I thought was right, I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. So I left it alone. Before the trial in 2015, I was approached by a gentleman that I didn't know who he was, and he started to berate me, just started to call me all kinds of names, and I reported him. I reported him to the judge and said, I don't know who this guy is, but here's his name, and he's listening to my deposition, he's doing all these things, and I don't get it. Didn't think nothing of it. I moved on, no big deal. Turns out I made an enemy back then. Didn't realize it until 2018. In 2018, that same person made a civil case to where the judge said, we want to educate Mr. Coburn, not punish him. Turned that into a criminal case where I was facing 65 years in prison for the same exact thing, same exact facts, same exact person. Didn't make a difference.
Based on the original, case?
Yes, it was exactly the same. It was exactly the same. And going back to when you were saying as far as being vulnerable, I released the transcripts. I put it on my Facebook page. If anyone wants to see it, I have no problem with that. I have to block out certain names, of course, but you can see exactly what the judge said and see the exact complaint for 2018. It's literally the same. So in my mind, how does a civil procedure turn into a criminal case where I'm facing 65 years in prison? Didn't really make much sense. And I didn't understand that I made an enemy until the trial was pretty much over. So what ended up happening was I was buying a home and 2 days prior to the indictment being unsealed, I gave a deposit of about $30,000 to the builder to purchase the home. And 6 a.m. in the morning, I think it was actually 3 o'clock in the morning, my wife, she was having this dream, a recurring dream where she said, hey, the dog is barking. Don't you hear that? I said, no, I don't hear it. She says, well, someone's beating on the door too. I don't hear that because I'm up like I normally am at 2 a.m. working. There's no dog barking. There's no one banging on the door. She came out a second time and said the same thing. Still nothing. I went to bed and I had the same exact dream, but it was so real that I woke up. And when I woke up, the dog was barking and someone was banging on the door. So I go downstairs. Yeah, it was really trippy. So I go downstairs and my son tells me, hey, it's the police. And they say they have a warrant. And I'm like, a warrant for what? I open the door and this gentleman says, do you remember me? I didn't. I don't think he liked that answer, but I said, no, I don't remember you. 7 federal agents ran into my house and arrested me. It wasn't like you see in the movies where it's like everybody get down and nothing like that. They were very respectful. I asked them not to handcuff me in front of my children. They didn't. They let me go to the car, but they had to handcuff me before I got into the car. No big deal. Well, looking back at it, very big deal. But at the time, no big deal. Yeah, let's just keep moving. So they take me to the federal lockup downtown Orlando, and they didn't tell me at this point what I was under arrest for. We get into the holding cell, and they send a public defender in because I didn't have an attorney on retainer. And the first thing he says to me is, oh, so you're going to take a plea deal? I said, no, why would I take a plea deal? I don't even know what I'm charged with. So he shows me that it was bankruptcy fraud. I'm like, bankruptcy fraud? So I read the indictment, and I actually laugh. And the reason I laugh is because in my mind, I'm saying, I already went through this. And it isn't a case of double jeopardy because of how the federal system works. I wasn't worried about it because I already went through this, and they can just refer to the case in 2015 to see that there was no criminal intent here and this was already settled. So if a federal judge already said, well, Chris wasn't acting with any criminal intent, how does this, no big deal. The public defender, he says, I'm not sure why you're laughing at this, Mr. Coburn. You have a total exposure of 65 years.
Damn.
No, right, that's, still, it didn't, I don't want to say it didn't register, but in my mind, if you're innocent, you're innocent. So
you just can't believe it's going on.
That's interesting because, yeah, you're right about that. But even going through it, it was more of a, I just need to get through this because I didn't do anything.
Does this all go back to the same guy that was giving you a hard time?
Same guy. Again, I didn't realize this yet. I didn't know yet. All I knew at this point was that it was literally the same exact case from 2015. I didn't know that I didn't understand it was much deeper than that until I got the discovery, which came a little bit later. So they pretty much let me out. I think I was there for about 2 hours. And my wife came to pick me up. She was pregnant at the time. And we go home. And I start to call a bunch of attorneys. And everyone's like, oh, it'll be about $40,000 to represent you. Funny enough, I just gave $30,000 to buy my home. So I don't have any money for an attorney.
Right.
Didn't realize that they were that expensive when it comes to federal trials. And that's only up until trial. Then there's more money you have to spend once you actually get there. So in my mind, I'm like, I can't get this money back because, you know, me going through what I'm going through doesn't matter to the builder. I put a deposit on the house. They're building the house. That's pretty much it as far as I was aware. Screw it. This is the same exact case. How hard can it be? Might as well just get a public defender. Tell him exactly what happened in 2015. This should be a cakewalk. Not how it works.
I was going to say, there's absolutely no way it was a cakewalk.
Well, my mindset at the time was if you're innocent, because, okay, so the way you look at these things is if this is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, if I wasn't proven guilty back in 2015 over the same exact thing, surely the federal government has a lot more pressing issues than rehashing an old case to which they could look at the record and see there was no criminal intent here. The judge said it herself. Cakewalk is what I thought.
Right.
But it really isn't about innocence or guilt. It's more about numbers on the board. How many people can I lock up to see if I can one day become a judge? That's kind of how the prosecutors think from my perspective, from what I saw. So we go through this whole situation where I have this attorney. He gives me the discovery. It's 12,000 pages long. Okay? I take the 12,000 pages, I go through it in about 6 hours. And out of 12,000 pages, about 127 had anything to actually do with me. So there was a gentleman that I was acquainted with, and all his information was in there. And it kind of stood out to me that 6,000 pages were about this person here. So my attorney says to me, well, they don't really want you, they want this other guy. I don't know what this other guy was actually doing, so I'm not gonna lie and say that he did something that I'm not aware of just to get myself out of trouble.
Is the other guy the guy that was causing you trouble, or this is a different guy?
Different guy that we did loan modifications together.
Ah.
But he was involved in some other things that I wasn't aware of. And they basically said, if you tell us that he's the one that did all this, it won't go away, but how about you just take a plea deal, it'll be a misdemeanor, you can go home, you'll never hear from it again, you're fine if you just tell us that it was him. I said, no, I'm not gonna tell you it was him because he didn't do anything from what I could tell. All the business we did together was above board. It was loan modifications, and I don't know anything about anything else. Again, one of the things I learned in this journey is that not everyone has the same values.
No, they don't.
Yeah, I didn't know that. As stupid as it sounds, as gullible as it sounds, I operate from a place of, if I tell you something, then that's what it is. There's no underhanded things coming after that. So taking a position like I'm willing to go to trial to stand up for what I believe in, because I'm not going to lie on this person and say he did something that I don't know he did. Turns out he was willing to do that. So, wow. Yeah. He says, yeah, Chris is the mastermind. He taught me everything that I know. But I have your bank records and you're making $40,000 a day, because he was triple dipping on some real estate deals. He was buying the home that was in foreclosure. He was filing the suggestion of bankruptcies himself. Then he would sell it to a trust which he owned, and then sell it to another third party which he also controlled.
Why are you being targeted in this, do you think? I'm curious.
I found out why. It was a little bit later on in the story. It's from the same gentleman, because so when you have a discovery, they give you everything they have on you to say that you're the person that they're looking for and you're guilty. In the discovery, there was a document where this gentleman told a lady who said she's never met me except for one time. He told her, Chris Coburn is the person you're looking for. He's done this with a bunch of other people. Now, this lady was never brought up as far as the charge is concerned, but she wrote a letter to the prosecutor's office. And in the letter that I found, she says, I was working with this other person until you called me, talking about the prosecutor from 2015, and told me to get an attorney because Chris Coburn is the one that I'm looking for. It's not how it worked, but that's what he told her to do. So I find out later that he's telling her to file a complaint that I'm the one that she was working with, but she had an affidavit, again, that I found where she says, no, I was working with this other gentleman, and these are all my signatures on the paperwork. I never worked with this lady ever in life.
So are you trying to go through at this time, and because I know how the public defender's office is. I mean, God bless them. They've got 10 billion cases they're trying to figure out. But right. You're really, at this point, you're having to do so much of your own research and looking through documents, and you're having to really weed through 12,000 pages is a lot of pages. And then you're also getting a big education on, well, shoot, there's so much misinformation here. It should be, to me, it would be easy because I'm a Pollyanna when it comes to innocent till proven guilty. However, when you're under federal investigation, that's a whole nother ball of wax. It doesn't always necessarily work that way in our court system. How'd you make it through? Like when you're going through this, like obviously we're going to get to the outcome, or at least where we're at now, but I'm always fascinated about the human side of it. Your wife's pregnant at the time you get arrested. You have $30,000 of your money that you put down on a new house that they're building. How are you maintaining your sanity? What are you doing through this? Did you just become so focused on the case that kept you going? Is it faith? Is it what was going on then that you were able to continue?
Well, without burying the lead too much, this was something that I was actually, I'm not a religious person at all, but I consider myself a spiritual person. And later on in the story, I reveal a dream that I had. I wasn't aware that I was warned about this exact set of circumstances in 2013, I think it was. I had a dream. And in the dream, as crazy as it sounds, God told me, you're about to go through some stuff, but it's okay. I'm going to take care of it. I didn't realize that I had that dream until I was going through the character witness, basically finding things from my Facebook page, another Facebook page, where I would, mentor kids. And it's not something that I really shared that much, but I was looking for character references from my own Facebook to basically show, hey, look, I would go to the courthouse to collect clothes. And they would give me, the people that I went to the courthouse, as far as the federal courthouse, whenever there were any bankruptcies or anything for that matter, they would donate clothes to me, and I would record myself handing them out to the homeless so that I can get more clothes. And as I'm going through that, I find this dream that I had in 2013 that basically said, this is what you're about to go through. So it wasn't anything consciously that I did to stay sane. My wife definitely helped a lot. I had really, really good friends through this entire thing, but I was so focused on just making sure that I didn't go away that everything else honestly suffered, unfortunately.
So you were able to stay out of jail,
Right.
while the trial, everything was going on, which
Yes, I
is
was.
a blessing.
Right.
Because that doesn't always happen either, but obviously that's a huge blessing, because then you really can work on your case.
Right.
So what happens when you find all this information and you think you understand, or at least you're pretty sure you understand what's going on? How do you, as a layperson, as the defendant,
Mm-hmm.
how do you get that across to them? How do you go, all right, here are all the things wrong with this case? Does the public defender go, all right, you're right, Chris, and here we go?
No.
So how does that work? How do you finally, I mean, I'm already frustrated for you. So how do you get that message through? I don't even know the answer to this. Are you still in this case?
Well, technically, yes.
Okay.
But it's we'll get to that as a matter of fact.
Okay.
So you don't really get it through, because the way the public defender's office, from the people that I've dealt with, see it is that you need to just shut up and do what we're telling you to do. And every week they would offer me a plea deal. Every week it was misdemeanor, no jail time, just admit that you did it. But again, I'm the dummy that says, if I didn't do something, I'm not going to say that I actually did it. Let's take this all the way through. I understand what I'm facing. And some people might say that it's selfish because I have a wife at home, but she supported me, and children. She supported me the entire time, saying, well, you didn't do it. So why are you going to go and say you did it? And if anyone ever sees your name is going to be mixed in with fraud when you really didn't do anything. So yeah, let's fight this. So you don't get it through the public defender's office because they don't really want to hear it. My first attorney actually dropped me because I brought it to his attention that I wasn't comfortable with the fact that we weren't being aggressive at all. We're not interviewing witnesses. You have people that worked with myself and this other gentleman that decided he wanted to say that I'm the mastermind behind everything. You have people that worked with him that says, no, he was telling me to go this way. And Chris will come back and say, that's not good for you, go this other way. 22 witnesses were willing to come to court on my behalf, and he never called any of them. So when I realized that he wasn't calling anyone, I said, hey, look, why are we just hoping that this goes away? Why aren't we a little bit more deliberate in our actions? He says, well, I have a conflict of interest now. I can no longer represent Mr. Coburn. So I get another public defender. 2 hours away from my house. He met with me one time, and for 6 months, he never met with me again or even discussed the case. Not once. I kept showing him, I said, just give me 30 minutes. I can prove to you that I'm innocent. Not because it's my feelings and my emotions. Here's actual evidence. Let's review it. Let's just take 30 minutes out and review it. For 6 months, he ducked and dodged me and never wanted to meet with me. He just kept sending me plea agreements. Every week, it's, here, take a plea agreement. There's an email.
So they all wanted you, at the time, their whole MO was a plea agreement is your best route, Chris.
Right.
And here's why. And you were absolutely adamantly not going to take that for any reason.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. So we ended up actually with the second attorney, 2 weeks before trial, he takes a vacation. And he tells me, hey, when I get back the night before trial, let's meet at my hotel and go over, strategy. Let's do it, no problem. Night before trial comes, I don't hear from him.
So you don't hear from your attorney the night before the trial?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I don't, man, I'm stressed out for you right now. I think that just everything, it's just fascinating to me. Again, this goes back to tenacity, resilience on your part. Whenever you're fighting against in what you feel is an injustice,
Right.
then you're going it alone. And I know you're not alone because you have friends and family, but still, it's you. You're
Right.
you're front and center.
Right.
So what happens the next day? And I have to message somebody because I'm supposed to do a show in a little bit. I'm going to tell them we're going to have to wait about 10 minutes. We may have to do a part 2, Chris, because we have lots of stuff to cover. And I didn't realize we were going to not cover it in 30 minutes. I should have known better. I don't want to miss out on this though. So I'm not ignoring you. I'm just messaging.
I understand. I completely understand. I will say 2 things though. Professionally, this whole thing was a nightmare because working in credit repair, if I have a realtor or a loan officer that depends on me, how do you explain to them that you're going through a federal criminal case, and if you say you're going to call them back later on and you never get a chance to call them back, how do you explain that the federal government is trying to bury you? You can't. And then home life, while my wife tried a lot, it was just me again saying, yeah, I understand that you're feeling a certain kind of way about this, that, or the third, but they're trying to send me away for 65 years. So a lot suffered over the course of 2 years. So fast forwarding back to the trial, the next morning I saw him, we spoke. The first day, it was pretty simple. There weren't really too many witnesses as far as people that I had interactions with, but the government called a forensic accountant, this person, that person. And it was a throwaway day, I guess you can say. And the attorney said, hey, after we're done today, let's meet at my hotel and kind of go over what happened for the day so we can prepare for tomorrow. I don't think I have to tell you that we never met that day after the first day of trial either. He didn't want to meet. So
how do you not meet? Like, that's for a whole nother topic.
No,
so you have to go back in cold the next day?
Yeah, I was actually co-counsel. I had to, he would ask a question and I would write down on a piece of paper, ask this as well, because he didn't know anything about the case. And he later on told me that the reason that he never really got into it is because when you start with a federal criminal case, you start in a casket, was his words. And every time someone goes on the stand against you, it's a nail in your coffin. And he said, I haven't heard any nails in your coffin yet. So this looks really, really, really good. I thought it was going to be a bloodbath. So in my mind, I'm like, wait, you thought it was going to be a bloodbath. That's the reason you were ignoring me? When I'm telling you that I'm innocent and I can prove it to you this entire time, you're ignoring me because you pretty much knew for a fact that we were going to go in there and get slaughtered, and you didn't even want to prepare for that? You didn't.
Wow.
Had to come back the next day. Second day of trial shows up. That's when they start calling witnesses. It was an ish show, so to speak. The gentleman who said that I was the mastermind got on the stand, and the judge asks him a very straightforward question. Did you ever intend on hurting anyone? He says, no. Or my attorney asks him that. He says, no, I didn't. So the judge looks at him and says, so why'd you plead guilty to something that you didn't feel you were doing wrong? This guy did 53 fraudulent bankruptcy petitions that they caught on to 53 of them. He did a whole lot more. So his plea deal was, if you say Chris Coburn is the one that did all of these, we'll just have you forego jail, but you have to come and testify.
Oh, I got you.
That was his reason for actually getting up there. So again, the transcripts go over all this. I don't know if you're familiar with how court works, but none of this can be made up because the transcripts are public if you know how to get them. And as I said, I have no problem releasing them. He said he's never seen me file bankruptcy for anyone. We went to court together one time, he said. And my attorney says, well, did you see him with any bankruptcy paperwork? He says, no, I didn't. The prosecutor actually lost his temper with his own witness and was basically like, but you said, and then composed himself and said, you said that Mr. Coburn was the mastermind, but you've never seen him do anything. How does that work? So my attorney felt better after the second day of trial, where he basically realized that none of this was making sense.
So the judge obviously smelled something.
Again, on my Facebook page, I have the judge's words, where the judge wasn't even sure this should go to the jury. The judge,
the judge sort of, I mean, the judge must have known sort of what's going on.
right. He didn't feel as if it should even go to the jury. So what ends up happening is we take a lunch break. Well, before the lunch break, the judge comes out and he dismisses the jury, and he says to my attorney, hey, I have a plea agreement from another person here. Are you aware of it? To my attorney says, no, I'm not aware of it. What is it? So the judge reads it to us, and it's basically a plea agreement of someone that worked with this guy who's pointing the finger at me, taking responsibility for everything I'm being charged with, saying, no, I'm the one that worked with this guy, and we split $100-something thousand in commissions. Here's all the proof. So the judge says, this sounds like a Brady violation to me. And a Brady violation, for those that don't know, is basically when the prosecution holds back exculpatory evidence, evidence that's beneficial to me as a defendant, from my defense team. So when there's a Brady violation, trial is over. We're done. We're going home. You guys on the prosecution side screwed up. So the judge tells my attorney to file a Rule 29 motion for acquittal. He tells my attorney to do that. So when we go for the lunch break, I call my wife. I said, hey, look, this is about to end. This is going to end with an acquittal. The judge tells my attorney, file a motion for acquittal because something isn't right here. We get back. I'm ready for the acquittal to pretty much be ruled on. And the judge or the prosecution says, well, we already sent the jury out. Let's see what they say. And the judge's response is, I don't know if there's enough here to actually go to a jury, but fine, I'll allow it. But I reserve the right to take it back from them at any point. Basically saying if they find him guilty, I can still overrule them if I want to, is what he said. So I'm super pumped because this is about to be over. And the jury comes out. They read out all the charges, 7 counts, guilty on all 7 counts.
No.
Now, in the closing arguments, the prosecutor literally says that they have no evidence against me. He says that. Again, this is in the transcript. He says, direct evidence is if Mr. Coburn took a gun and shot someone on HD camera. That's direct evidence. We don't need that here. Mr. Coburn cashed a check on the date this lady filed for bankruptcy, which is another lady that they brought in. He had to have something to do with it. And she said he had something to do with it. That's good enough for us. So when you hear that it's supposed to be above reasonable doubt, it's not true. Circumstantial evidence can play into a federal criminal case. And that's what happened in my case. So after saying that they don't have any evidence against me, and basically admitting that all the witnesses they brought, there was holes in the story, they still found me guilty on all 7 counts. So I'm sitting there as a 7-time felon now. Sitting here today as a 7-time felon. And I got upset because I spoke to my attorney afterwards, and I'm like, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And even though he didn't meet with me 1 time in 6 months or only 1 time in 6 months, I never lost my cool with him. It was always, please, can we meet? But I got upset because I called him and the judge said to my attorney, refile your motion for acquittal. He tells him that after the guilty verdict, he says, refile the motion for acquittal. And he basically says, I'll take care of this, is what the judge says. Again, this is in the transcript. So my attorney refiles the motion for acquittal, motion for a new trial, and a motion for dismissal. The judge, as the judge asked him to do. The judge denies all 3. So
denies them?
Denies all 3. The motion for acquittal, the motion for new trial, and the motion for dismissal. Now, I understood why he denied it, because I would have denied it as well. When my attorney wrote the motion, he basically said that my rights were violated. I wasn't given due process. They were withholding evidence. But the prosecution was crafty. They said, how? How was Mr. Coburn prejudiced by us not giving you this information? How would your defense have been any different? My attorney couldn't answer that. He couldn't answer it because he met with me 1 time in 6 months and we never discussed the trial. So instead of having the ammunition that he could, use and say, this is why Mr. Coburn was prejudiced, he didn't have anything to respond to the prosecution. So his motion was just bare. And the judge says in his order, just saying that Mr. Coburn was prejudiced isn't good enough. You need to explain to me how he was prejudiced. So I say to my attorney, the judge is telling us to take another bite of the apple. Let's do it. He says, no, my job now is just to keep you out of jail. Wait, what? No. The judge is telling you to refile the motion for acquittal. All right, so just to make sure we're clear here, you're not doing anything else, right? He says, no, I'm not. Okay.
I'm just curious, and we're gonna have to do a part 2, Chris.
That's fine.
You have a lot of stories to continue to share.
and
I have a lot of questions, and I think a lot of people do.
Okay.
I have one question. Mm-hmm. How does the attorney just get to say no?
I don't know, but I didn't expect.
I'm fascinated by that. If it isn't, that's a whole nother. I got to go watch Law and Order SVU. I got to get like Chicago Pete. I have to figure out what's going on. I've heard Brady before,
right?
Which is definitely a Brady violation, no doubt in my mind.
It gets so much worse.
The thing is that you want to fight. You're not trying to plea. I would think that they would want that.
No.
I mean, given their caseload, look, I'm not giving the public defenders a hard time because I have friends that have been public defenders, and it is it's a tough road to hoe. But still, you've got somebody who is innocent and who wants to prove their innocence, and I would think you'd want to take that. All right, so I have to part till part 2 for you now. So will you promise me that you will come back on the show either later this afternoon or tomorrow? Do you have time?
I do. I'll make time for you, Ted.
Okay. So I want you to follow Chris Coburn. His story's out there, but I'd love for you to hear it live on the show again, part 2 of it. Follow the TED Show. We'll continue to have updates. Follow Chris Coburn. You have a YouTube channel too, Chris.
I do.
That we want people to take a look at too. But I want to hear what's going on. But I also want to respect the time of the other people, and so I really want to hear more. So we're going to do something I've never done before, which is a part 2, to hear the rest of your story, because I'm fascinated right now. I'm sad and frustrated and fascinated.
It gets so much worse, Ted. So when we meet again.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to get a giant cocktail for this one, not just the little one I had to start this off with. All right, so Chris Coburn, thank you so much. Guys, we'll put it on the schedule as soon as I get it, and then you guys can come back, but follow him for an update, follow me for an update, and thank you, Chris, and I'm sorry, and I can't wait to hear the rest of your story.
Ted, it was my pleasure, and I'll see you again soon.
All right, see you very soon, my friend. Thank you so much. Guys, follow Chris. Follow him. All the information's on his page, or follow the TED Show page, or follow both. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
All right, bye.